Welcome to my channel. Today we will meet the thief who stole $3.5 billion but lost it all in one phone call. This is Jimmy Jong. In 2012, he was an ordinary software engineer living in New York City. Then everything changed. This year, Jimmy discovered a loophole on the black market website Silk Road that allowed him to steal bitcoins for free. Let me explain. Silk Road was a website where people could buy illegal things using Bitcoin. There were all kinds of prohibited products and services available on this website. You could buy drugs, weapons, stolen credit cards, hacked passwords, you name it. It was basically the Amazon of the criminal world. And just like Amazon, Silk Road had its own payment processing system. However, their system was very rudimentary. It couldn't process payments immediately, so the only way to receive money on Silk Road was to request a withdrawal. But then there was a big problem. Once you requested a withdrawal, the funds would sit in your account for 3 days before they were released. During these 3 days, you couldn't spend the money at all. You couldn't even transfer it to another account. 3 days later, the funds became available and then you could withdraw them from the platform. But this presented a huge opportunity for scammers like Jimmy Jong. Here's what he did. He created hundreds of accounts on Silk Road. Then he loaded up each account with a few thousand bitcoins. Now normally, if you just left these coins on the site, they wouldn't do anything. They would just sit in your account for 3 days. But here's what Jimmy did. Every single day he would log into his accounts and click the withdraw button. His code automatically filed withdrawal requests for every single coin in his account. So now instead of having one transaction that processed after 3 days, he had hundreds of transactions that processed after 3 days. The issue was that although he had hundreds of withdrawal requests, he only had one withdrawal limit. Basically, Silk Road had a security measure in place that prevented people from creating multiple withdrawals in a row. If someone tried to make more than one withdrawal, they would simply be declined. But Jimmy was abusing the system by making hundreds of requests, not withdrawals. So the system didn't count them against his withdrawal limit. So in the end, Jimmy's hundreds of withdrawal requests were approved because they didn't count against his limit. But once the coins were withdrawn, they were gone. There was no way to get them back. This meant that Jimmy successfully stole 30,000 bitcoins from Silk Road. At the time, these 30,000 bitcoins were worth around $1.5 million. Not bad for a few hours of work. Over the next few years, Jimmy repeated this process several times. He would make thousands of fake withdrawal requests on Silk Road and then siphon off tens of millions of coins. By 2014, he had amassed a fortune. But he was still just a computer guy. He was still living in his apartment in New York City. That is until he bought a house in San Jose, California for $3 million. After buying the house, Jimmy went ghost mode again. He didn't make any public appearances, and he certainly didn't make any large purchases. He stayed out of the public eye for the next 4 years. Then in 2018, Jimmy came back with a bang. He started spending money like crazy. He bought a $2 million penthouse in Vancouver. He spent $700,000 on a Ferrari 488 GTB. He started throwing wild parties and spending $100,000 per week on champagne alone. Just imagine how much this guy was spending. He bought a $2 million mansion in Canada and then a $1.2 million mansion in LA. He bought a Maybach, a Bentley, and a Lamborghini. He threw parties with beautiful women and celebrities. He was living the best life. But through all of this, he never revealed his face. He always wore a hood when he went out in public. He covered his face with sunglasses and hats. He was literally a real-life Walter White. Through all this, nobody knew who Jimmy Jong really was. But we do know that he made at least $50 million from the Silk Road hack. But now it's time for our boy to make a big mistake. In 2019, Jimmy got careless. Someone actually managed to find out his real name. When Jimmy transferred some of his bitcoins, he accidentally used his real name instead of his alias. Somehow this information leaked to the public. Suddenly, everyone was talking about the mysterious hooded man who had stolen $50 million from Silk Road. Even the FBI was on the case. They had a whole task force dedicated to finding Jimmy Jong. Jimmy realized that he needed to lay low for a while. So he stopped his lavish spending and disappeared into thin air. It looked like the FBI would never find him, but they did. In 2021, the FBI raided his house in California. This was probably the most unusual FBI raid in history. Instead of finding drugs or weapons, they found millions of dollars worth of crypto. The FBI had finally caught up with the elusive Bitcoin phantom. Jimmy Chong was arrested and taken to court. To make things worse, he wasn't even good at hiding his identity. As soon as the news broke out about the arrest, someone leaked the footage of Jimmy at the courthouse. This was the first time anyone had seen his face, and guess what? He still had a hood on. Now let's talk about the real reason why Jimmy Chong lost everything. Here's the thing. When Jimmy was transferring his money, he used his real name. But there was one tiny detail. The name he used wasn't his real name. It was his brother's name. And this little mistake led to a mountain of evidence against him. The FBI was able to track down every single transaction Jimmy had ever made. They found all his crypto wallets and they saw everything he had stolen. I mean everything. Jimmy was so careful throughout his entire life, but in the end, his ego got the better of him. He thought he was smarter than everyone else. He thought he would get away with it forever. But he made one small mistake, and that was enough for the FBI to put all the pieces together. When the FBI searched his house, they found 480,000 bitcoins. Fast forward to 2023. Jimmy finally pleaded guilty to his crimes and he was sentenced. He got 5 years in prison, but he won't make it out alive. I hope this story has taught you a valuable lesson. Money moves fast, but mistakes move even faster. So why don't you come back here every week and learn more about amazing stories like this one? Thank you for watching. Make sure to watch the next video.